friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tom Collier, the Painting Fool. I hope you enjoy watching these paintings as much as I enjoy doing them. After all, that's the name of the game. It's having fun and being creative. Today I'll be doing a painting from a photo from unsplash.com by Vladimir Kudinov. It's a foggy mountain hillside full of pines. I call it Hillside Pines. I love the almost abstract quality that the photograph presents, and will attempt to capture some of that with the painting. I'll be using 9 by 12 inch arches, 140 pound cold press watercolor paper, watercolor paints by Leningrad White Knights, Winsor & Newton masking fluid, and brushes by Princeton. Let's get started, splash some water, and paint together and see what happens. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing. Okay, here we go. Well, you know what? We've already went. I got started without you, it looks like. I forgot to turn the camera on record once again. This is why they call me a fool, I guess, or maybe a moron. I don't know. It's evidently an easy thing for me to do. Well, we've put in a kind of a very light gray wash for the sky. I mean, extremely light, and when it dries, you may not notice it much at all. And then a light green wash representing where the hillside is. And of course, now we're putting in some of the beginnings of the pines. We have a long ways to go with this. One of the things I did before you came on board was I put some masking fluid down. If you notice in the photograph, there were some white tree trunks. I don't think they're birch. I think they're representative of kind of dead timber. But anyway, we put the masking fluid down so that to preserve that white, because it would be difficult to try to paint around that. Okay, as you've probably noticed, I'm putting a variety of different tones of green in there using a couple of different colors, again from Leningrad White Knights. Mixtures of yellow, green, emerald green, green, and you know, put some sepia in there to kind of darken things up, and right now I'm doing what's kind of called a negative painting. I'm kind of painting in between things, and using a Princeton number 8 round. I really like this scene. I hope this turns out okay. This is about the point where my wife would usually say, this doesn't look like much. She's not very impressed at this point, but then she gets fascinated as things go on and start to take shape, and to me that's kind of the magic of watercolor. If you watch other watercolor artists doing their work, I notice the same thing, and that's kind of fascinating that because it's done in layers, and it's usually done from the lightest to the darkest. There are points where things don't really start to take shape until a little bit later on. and that's just the way it goes. I've got some Kleenex now, and I'm gonna lift a little bit of the paint out and bring some lighter areas back in. Try to bring a little bit of the foggy feel also. Yes, I said foggy, not froggy. I've got my fan brush now, and I like to use this brush, especially when I'm painting pines. It just tends to be comfortable. Okay. I'm gonna put some of the later brown tones in there. I'm using some burnt sienna and some red ochre. A little bit of yellow ochre, and along with some yellow green. Putting some darker tones now back in. Kind of create a feeling of a lot of variety going on this hillside. Yes, it's almost all pine. It's a pine forest, but the trees don't all grow exactly the same color. And some of them are in various stages of dormancy, or maybe older trees that are starting to die. The circle of life, So we want to have a lot of texture going on here. Hopefully we'll kind of enhance the abstract quality of what's going on in the photograph. And we're starting to get there little by little. This seems like a relatively simple composition, but there's really quite a lot going on. I'm going to wet things out a little bit here, give it a little spray, and come back in with my tissue again and lift out a little bit here and there, especially along the edge of the hill, trying to create that feeling of fog back there. Some people have asked me, why I call myself the painting fool. It's kind of an interesting story. I retired a few years back, and didn't, because of some health issues, wasn't really able to pursue some of the things that I wanted to in retirement. And my wife decided that what I needed to keep me busy was a hobby. So at Christmas time, she bought me a variety of things to choose from. One was a book on how to build birdhouses, and that didn't really interest me all that much. She knew that I had an art background, and so she bought me some inexpensive art supplies, some watercolor paper and some paints and a few brushes. And I didn't really pay much attention to it. I hadn't painted in years, really. And so I kind of left that stuff sit for quite a while, almost a year. And then, for reasons that are unknown to me, I decided to pick it up one day and kind of fell in love with it. And I've been painting like a fool ever since. And she's the one that actually came up with the name. I was having a little difficulty deciding on a name for my YouTube channel, and she suggested, how about the Painting Fool? And I kind of liked it, so that's how I became a fool. Uh, so thank you, dear. Appreciate that, and I'm comfortable with the name. I really love it. I have actually produced probably more paintings in the last year and a half than I have my entire career before that. So I'm having fun, and I hope that by watching these little demonstrations that maybe this will encourage some of you out there to, kind of pick it up as just as a hobby. If you don't want to get serious, you don't have to. It's just something that's kind of exciting and fun to do. So, and it can be very expensive if you let it, and I've let it. I'm kind of addicted to buying art supplies, but if you just get yourself a few simple brushes and some decent paint, and my suggestion would be buy a high quality 100% cotton watercolor paper, either Arches or Fabriano Artistico. Are good. Stonehenge is a decent paper. Don't skimp on the paper. Higher quality paper will make your results much better. So, right now, what I'm doing is taking the masking fluid off, and you do that just simply by rubbing it with your finger, and it kind of rolls up into a little latex ball, and which you can brush off of your painting. And lo and behold, there are the white areas that got preserved. That's another kind of magical thing. Masking fluid is handy in a number of ways. If you're trying to create, let's say, white caps out on the lake, and you don't want to have to try to paint around all those things, you can put it in with masking fluid first, and then you can lay your washes right over top of that. And after the masking fluid and the paint are dry, you just rub it a little bit, and the magic happens. Anywhere you want to preserve the white of the paper. Pure watercolorists always kind of insist that the white should be the color of the paper and not white paint. I don't subscribe to that all that much. There are some opaque white paints, gouache for one, acrylic ink for another, that come in handy to add some highlights back in where maybe you didn't think to use masking fluid. As I've always said, it's you're the creator and the artist, and it's your painting, and you can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. in the end of things, it's you that is going to make these decisions. Okay, kind of going back in with a mixture of sepia and burnt umber. You create a very dark gray tone, and with my liner brush, my Princeton liner, I'm putting in some shadows in and around some of these white tree trunks to give them a little form, so they don't look just like flat two-dimensional lines. So that's what we're doing right now. Okay, we've got the fan brush back, and going to put some final touches in here, some little bit darker pines again, add some more layers, some more trees. These pine forests are really pretty complex, I think. When you look at them, it kind of amazes me how closely, how thick and close the trees grow next to each other, and they don't seem to infringe on each other too much until one of them is either infected or just plain old and falls over, as many of us do. I'm pretty fortunate. I've only fallen once, and that was slipped on a piece of ice. I didn't really injure myself much, and a good Samaritan came by walking his dogs and helped me get back up on my feet, which is something that these days I'm not really able to do by myself very well. So I was thankful that he came by. I only had to lay on the ground. This was in the wintertime too, of course, because I slipped on ice. So we, some people think that we have ice on the ground here this time of year in June, but that's not true. We're usually done with the ice about May. Anyway, I thank that gentleman that came by, and I was no worse for the wear. Pulled a few muscles, that was it. So, all right, well, I'm pretty satisfied with this, so I'm going to sign off on it right now. I'm using my white Jelly Roll gel pen for this because I'm not very good at signing my name with a brush. So there you go. Hillside Pines. I like it. Hope you do too. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and I hope it inspires you. Thank you much for watching. I hope that you'll subscribe, and can't wait for the next one. We'll see you soon.